Elsie de Wolfe was a foundational figure in the history of modern interior design. Before her intervention, the field did not exist as a formal profession. Homes of the wealthy were decorated either by architects who focused on structure over livability, or by upholsterers and furniture salesmen whose goal was to sell as much product as possible. The result was the dark, cluttered, and oppressive aesthetic of the late Victorian and Gilded Age periods. Elsie de Wolfe systematically dismantled this approach. Through a series of high-profile commissions and a widely read book, she introduced a new philosophy based on light, air, simplicity, and comfort. She professionalized the practice of decoration, establishing it as a legitimate and lucrative career, particularly for women. Beyond her professional achievements, her personal life represented a quiet but persistent challenge to the social conventions of her era. She maintained a 40-year partnership with literary agent Elizabeth Bessie Marbury, living in a Boston marriage that allowed them a degree of personal freedom. Later, her marriage to Sir Charles Mendel secured her social standing, but marked a complex negotiation of public identity. This account will detail the life of Elsie de Wolfe chronologically, examining the key events that shaped her career, her aesthetic, and her enduring legacy. Ella Anderson de Wolfe, later known as Elsie de Wolfe, was born on December 20th, 1859 in New York City, during a period of rapid urban growth and social stratification in the United States. Her father, Stephen de Wolfe, worked as a doctor, providing the family with a stable income through his medical practice, which catered to the city's emerging middle and upper classes. Her mother, Georgina Copeland de Wolfe, came from a background that connected the family to New York's established social circles, though not among the ultra-wealthy elite like the Astors or Vanderbilts. The de Wolfes occupied a position within respectable society, enjoying comforts such as a well-appointed home and access to cultural events, but without the extravagant fortunes that defined the pinnacle of Gilded Age opulence. This environment shaped Elsie's early perceptions of class and aesthetics, as the family's lifestyle was comfortable yet restrained, lacking the ostentatious displays that characterized the era's nouveau riche. From a young age, Elsie would reflect on this upbringing, noting how it instilled in her a sensitivity to surroundings that went beyond mere material wealth. Growing up in the de Wolfe family home in New York City, Elsie experienced a domestic environment that she later described as profoundly uninspiring and even burdensome. The rooms were dominated by dark, cumbersome furniture typical of Victorian tastes, heavy wooden pieces with intricate carvings, upholstered in somber fabrics like deep velvets, and brocades in shades of brown, maroon, and black. Walls were often covered in heavy wallpapers with repetitive, oppressive patterns, and lighting was dim, relying on gas lamps that cast long shadows and contributed to an overall atmosphere of gloom. Elsie recalled this setting as physically oppressive, evoking feelings of confinement and discomfort that affected her daily mood and well-being. This visceral reaction during her formative years sparked a lifelong pursuit of beauty, lightness, and harmony in living spaces, contrasting sharply with the era's norms. In the Gilded Age, where wealth was demonstrated through accumulation, piling on layers of rugs, draperies, artworks, and knickknacks without regard for cohesion, Elsie developed an unconventional philosophy that one's environment directly impacted personal happiness, health, and emotional state. She believed surroundings should uplift rather than weigh down, a view that challenged the period's emphasis on quantity over quality in displays of status, setting the foundation for her future career in interior design. Elsie's education followed the standard path for young women of her social standing in 19th century America: prioritizing refinement over intellectual or professional development. She attended private schools in New York City, where curricula focused on subjects like etiquette, French language, music, needlework, and basic literature, all aimed at equipping her for a role as a wife and hostess in high society rather than fostering independence or career ambitions. These institutions emphasized deportment, conversation skills, and the arts of domestic management, reflecting the era's gender norms that viewed marriage as the primary goal for women of means. Lessons were often conducted in small, exclusive settings with peers from similar backgrounds, reinforcing social hierarchies and expectations. By her late teens, Elsie had internalized these teachings, but also began to chafe against their limitations, sensing they confined her to a predefined path. This phase culminated in 1881, at age 22, when her family sent her to a finishing school in Scotland. This overseas education was intended to further polish her manners, expose her to European sophistication through studies in history, art, and social graces, and broaden her cultural horizons in a setting removed from American influences, ultimately preparing her for entry into elite matrimonial circles. At the finishing school in Scotland, Elsie immersed herself in an environment designed to refine young women for aristocratic life, including advanced lessons in protocol, dance, and conversational arts, alongside exposure to British customs and continental European influences. The school's structured routine, daily classes, supervised outings to historical sites, and interactions with international students aimed to instill poise and cultural knowledge, enhancing her appeal in the marriage market. However, this period also deepened her awareness of personal autonomy, as the distance from home allowed for self-reflection amid Scotland's landscapes and traditions. By 1883, this training led to her formal presentation to society at the court of Queen Victoria in London, a prestigious event symbolizing her debut into the transatlantic elite. For affluent American girls, this coming out was a coveted milestone, involving elaborate preparations such as selecting gowns, practicing curtsies, and navigating royal protocols under scrutiny from courtiers and peers. In 1883, Elsie's presentation at Queen Victoria's court in London marked a pivotal rite of passage, where she was introduced as a debutante in a ceremony filled with pomp, including wearing a formal white gown with a train, feathers, and gloves, and performing a deep curtsy before the monarch. This event, attended by nobility and diplomats, was meant to affirm her social eligibility and open doors to advantageous matches. However, Elsie found the experience profoundly disempowering, feeling reduced to an object evaluated primarily on physical appearance, family connections, and dowry potential, rather than her intellect or personality. She was self-conscious about not fitting the era's ideals of conventional beauty. Slender figures, delicate features, and demure demeanors, which intensified her sense of alienation. The court's rigid hierarchies and judgmental atmosphere solidified her aversion to the prescribed trajectory of marriage for status or financial security. Instead, it fueled her determination to seek independence, rejecting societal pressures that viewed women as ornamental or transactional figures in the Gilded Age's marriage economy. Upon returning to New York after her European experiences, Elsie integrated into a vibrant, youthful social circle among the city's fashionable elite, participating in balls, dinners, and outings that defined upper-class leisure. She quickly gained recognition for her vivacious energy, sharp wit, and emerging personal style, choosing lighter, more elegant attire that hinted at her aesthetic preferences amid the era's heavy fashions. This phase allowed her to navigate the gilded cage of high society, where activities revolved around seasonal events like opera nights and charity galas, but it also highlighted the tedium of idle pursuits. To combat boredom and express her creativity, Elsie turned to amateur theatrical productions, a favored diversion among the wealthy, often staged in private ballrooms or homes of affluent friends, with makeshift sets and costumes. Elsie's participation in amateur theatricals became a creative outlet where she excelled in roles that showcased her performative talents, charisma, and ability to captivate audiences. These productions, typically light comedies, tableaux vivants, or adaptations of popular plays, involved rehearsing lines, designing simple costumes, and collaborating with peers, providing a sense of accomplishment absent from routine social obligations. Through acting, she discovered a passion for the stage that transcended hobby status, viewing it as a potential avenue for financial self-sufficiency, despite the scandal associated with professional theater for women of her class in the 1880s. The era's moral codes deemed acting improper for ladies, risking social ostracism, yet Elsie saw it as an escape plan from dependency, allowing her to leverage her skills for autonomy. This involvement not only honed her artistic sensibilities, but also expanded her social network, introducing her to like-minded individuals who valued innovation over convention. Amid her active social life and theatrical engagements in the 1880s, Elsie formed the most significant personal relationship of her life, which would profoundly influence her future path. This connection emerged within the intimate circles of New York's elite gatherings and performances, where shared interests in culture, aesthetics, and independence fostered deep bonds. The relationship provided emotional support and collaborative opportunities, aligning with her evolving rejection of traditional norms and her quest for a self-determined existence, marking a turning point in her transition from societal debutante to a pioneering figure in design and lifestyle. In 1886, Elsie de Wolfe encountered Elizabeth Bessie Marbury through the overlapping networks of her social engagements and amateur theatrical activities in New York City. These circles included elite gatherings at private homes, charity events, and informal performances where young women of means mingled with intellectuals, artists, and emerging professionals in the arts. Bessie, already establishing herself as a trailblazer, was a natural presence in such environments due to her involvement in theater management and literary circles. Their initial meeting likely occurred at one of these events, perhaps a rehearsal or a society dinner, where Elsie's vibrant personality and Bessie's commanding intellect drew them into conversation. This encounter marked the beginning of a transformative relationship that would redefine Elsie's personal and professional trajectory, providing her with a supportive partner amid the constraints of Gilded Age society. Bessie Marbury stood out as an extraordinary figure in late 19th century New York. Born in 1856 into a distinguished family with roots in law and politics, her father was a prominent attorney, and her uncle had served as a U.S. congressman. From an early age, she rejected the conventional expectations placed on women of her era, such as prioritizing marriage, homemaking, and subservience to male authority. Instead, Bessie pursued higher education informally through self-study and mentorships, developing exceptional intelligence, political savvy, and business ambition. By the mid-1880s, she had pioneered a groundbreaking career as one of the world's first female literary and theatrical agents, a role that involved negotiating contracts, managing copyrights, and promoting talents in an industry dominated by men. Her client roster included luminaries like Oscar Wilde, whose plays she championed in America, George Bernard Shaw, for whom she secured transatlantic deals, and Victorian Sardou, the French dramatist, whose work she adapted for Broadway. Bessie's negotiation skills were legendary. She navigated complex legal and financial landscapes with precision, often outmaneuvering male counterparts through strategic alliances and unyielding persistence. Her success not only amassed personal wealth but also challenged gender norms, positioning her as a model of female empowerment in a time when women's professional opportunities were severely limited. The connection between Elsie and Bessie formed rapidly after their 1886 meeting, driven by a mutual recognition of shared values despite their contrasting personalities. Elsie, with her focus on aesthetics, social flair, and an obsession with fashion, manifested in her choice of elegant, light-colored ensembles and accessories that stood out in Victorian heaviness, was drawn to Bessie's depth and strength. Bessie, in turn, was unapologetically indifferent to personal appearance, often dressing in practical, unadorned clothing that prioritized functionality over style, and channeled her energies into intellectual pursuits like analyzing political reforms or debating literary trends. Yet their differences created a harmonious balance. Elsie brought lightness, social elegance, and a refined sense of beauty to the partnership, enhancing Bessie's world with grace and visual harmony. Bessie offered intellectual rigor, business expertise, and emotional stability, grounding Elsie's creative impulses with practical advice and financial insight. At their core, both women rejected the era's prescribed roles for females, marriage as a duty, domesticity as destiny, and craved autonomy, making their bond a powerful alliance against societal pressures. This complementarity fostered a deep emotional and intellectual intimacy, evolving from friendship into a lifelong companionship that supported each other's ambitions. Over the 6 years following their meeting, Elsie and Bessie's relationship intensified through frequent interactions within New York's cultural scene, including joint attendance at theater premieres, literary readings, and private gatherings. They exchanged ideas on art, society, and personal freedom, with Bessie introducing Elsie to progressive thinkers and political discussions, while Elsie shared her evolving aesthetic visions. This period allowed them to build trust and interdependence, as Bessie's professional network opened doors for Elsie's theatrical interests, and Elsie's social charm facilitated introductions for Bessie's clients. By the early 1890s, their connection had matured into a committed partnership characterized by mutual respect and shared goals of independence. This deepening bond provided Elsie with the encouragement to explore beyond amateur pursuits, while Bessie found in Elsie a counterbalance to her intense work life, creating a supportive dynamic that prepared them for a more formal union. In 1892, Elsie and Bessie took a significant step by establishing a shared residence at 122 East 17th Street, near Irving Place in New York City's Gramercy Park neighborhood, a fashionable area known for its literary and artistic residents. This move formalized their partnership, allowing them to cohabitate openly in a home that blended their lifestyles. The decision reflected their desire for a joint life free from traditional marital constraints, with Bessie's earnings from her agency providing the financial foundation for the household. The property, a townhouse with ample space for entertaining and personal quarters, became a symbol of their autonomy, enabling them to manage daily affairs collaboratively while pursuing individual careers. Their living arrangement fell under the contemporary term Boston marriage, a phrase coined in the late 19th century to describe long-term cohabiting relationships between two unmarried women, often from affluent backgrounds. While many such marriages were platonic, focused on companionship and economic practicality in an era when single women faced limited housing options, the label also served as a veiled acknowledgement of romantic or intimate partnerships between women, offering discretion in a society that frowned upon overt homosexuality. For Elsie and Bessie, this framework provided social legitimacy, allowing them to maintain respectability within elite circles without inviting scandal. It shielded their relationship from prying judgments, emphasizing intellectual and emotional compatibility over physical aspects, and aligned with progressive views emerging among educated women who prioritized careers and friendships over heterosexual norms. Soon after settling in, their home at 122 East 17th Street evolved into a central gathering place for New York's cultural elite, hosting regular events that blended entertainment, discourse, and networking. The salons, held primarily on Sundays, became renowned for their eclectic mix of attendees and stimulating atmosphere. Bessie orchestrated conversations on pressing topics like women's suffrage, literary innovations, and international politics, drawing on her expertise to facilitate debates. Elsie complemented this by curating the physical setting, selecting fresh floral arrangements for visual appeal, designing menus with light, elegant fare, and ensuring seamless hospitality. This division of roles highlighted their synergy, turning the home into a salon that rivaled European models like those of Gertrude Stein or Madame de Staël, but adapted to American dynamism. The salons attracted a stellar array of guests, reflecting Bessie's professional connections and Elsie's social prowess. Regular visitors included financier J.P. Morgan, whose business acumen intersected with Bessie's negotiations, playwright Oscar Wilde, a client of Bessie's during his American tours, actress Sarah Bernhardt, the era's theatrical icon known for her dramatic flair, and other figures like authors, actors, and politicians who shaped fin de siècle culture. These gatherings fostered collaboration, such as Wilde's American productions, and provided a platform for exchanging ideas on art, reform, and society, elevating the home's status as an intellectual beacon in New York. Within this shared space, Elsie undertook a complete renovation that crystallized her aesthetic principles, transforming the Victorian-era townhouse into a prototype of modern interior design. She favored light, pastel colors on walls to create openness, delicate French 18th century furniture with slender lines and ornate details for elegance without heaviness, and an uncluttered layout that prioritized airiness through minimal decorations, large mirrors to reflect light, and strategic placement of windows for natural illumination. This contrasted sharply with the era's dark, overstuffed interiors, embodying her belief in environments that promoted well-being. The home served as her inaugural showroom, where guests experienced her vision firsthand, subtly influencing tastes and laying groundwork for her future profession. Bolstered by Bessie's financial security from her thriving agency and unwavering emotional support, Elsie made the pivotal choice in the late 1890s to abandon amateur theatricals and embark on a professional acting career. Bessie's encouragement included practical advice on contracts and introductions to producers, while their stable home life provided the confidence to take this risk. This decision marked Elsie's full embrace of independence, leveraging the stage as a stepping stone toward greater self-determination, with Bessie as her steadfast ally. At the age of 32 in 1891, Elsie de Wolfe transitioned from amateur theatricals to a professional acting career, marking a bold departure from the societal expectations for women of her class in Gilded Age America. She secured a position with the esteemed theatrical company managed by producer Charles Frohman, a leading figure in New York's theater scene, known for launching stars and producing high-quality plays. Her inaugural role came in the historical drama Thermidor, authored by Victorian Sardou, a prominent French playwright who was one of Bessie Marbury's key clients, facilitating Elsie's entry through their shared professional network. This debut required Elsie to memorize lines, rehearse extensively under Frohman's direction, and perform in front of paying audiences, demanding a level of commitment far beyond her previous hobbyist experiences. The decision carried substantial social risks. In the late 19th century, professional acting was viewed as a disreputable occupation for upper-class women, akin to a manual trade that exposed them to public scrutiny, late nights, and associations with bohemian elements. It threatened to exile her from the insulated world of high society, where ladies were expected to maintain amateur pursuits or focus on domestic roles, potentially leading to ostracism from elite invitations and matrimonial prospects. Nevertheless, Elsie saw this as her sole feasible route to financial self-sufficiency, allowing her to earn a salary independent of family support or marriage, aligning with her long-standing desire for autonomy in an era when women's economic options were severely restricted. Elsie's professional tenure on the stage lasted 14 years, from 1891 to 1905, during which she attained a degree of celebrity status, appearing in numerous productions and touring across the United States. However, she was never regarded as a top-tier dramatic talent by contemporaries or critics, who offered consistent evaluations of her strengths and shortcomings. Reviews highlighted her commanding stage presence, her confident posture, expressive gestures, and ability to engage audiences through sheer vitality, along with her boundless energy and refined personal style that made her visually captivating. Yet, they frequently critiqued her for insufficient emotional range and authenticity in portraying complex characters, noting that her performances could feel superficial or mannered in serious roles. For instance, a New York Times review of one of her initial shows praised her charming vivacity and lively delivery, but deemed her interpretations of dramatic scenes lacking in conviction and depth, suggesting she relied more on personality than nuanced acting technique. Consequently, Elsie thrived most in genres like light comedies and farces, where her natural wit, precise comedic timing, and effervescent charm could shine without demanding profound psychological insight. These roles often involved witty banter, mistaken identities, or satirical takes on society, allowing her to draw on her social experiences and perform in ensembles that emphasized ensemble dynamics over individual monologues, contributing to her popularity in Broadway's lighter fare during the 1890s and early 1900s. Aware of her performative constraints, Elsie strategically capitalized on her innate sense of style to elevate her career, effectively turning her theatrical engagements into platforms for personal branding and fashion innovation. Unlike typical actors who depended on production-provided costumes, often generic, ill-fitting garments designed for durability rather than elegance, Elsie made annual pilgrimages to Paris, the epicenter of haute couture in the late 19th century. There, she commissioned bespoke wardrobes from renowned designers such as the House of Worth, founded by Charles Frederick Worth and known for its opulent silks and intricate embroideries, and Jacques Doucet, celebrated for his ethereal, feminine creations inspired by Rococo aesthetics. Investing thousands of dollars from her earnings, sums that represented significant portions of her income, She acquired gowns featuring flowing lines, pastel hues, lace overlays, and innovative cuts that contrasted with the era's corseted, heavy silhouettes. This approach positioned her costumes as central attractions, with audiences attending performances not just for the plot but to admire her attire, fostering a buzz that extended her appeal beyond theater enthusiasts. Media coverage amplified this phenomenon. Newspapers and magazines devoted columns to detailed descriptions of her outfits, analyzing fabrics, colors, accessories, and how they complemented her figure, thereby establishing Elsie as a trendsetter. By the turn of the century, she had earned the moniker the best-dressed woman in America, a title that reflected her influence on public tastes, inspiring women across social strata to emulate her lighter, more modern elegance and solidifying her status as a national fashion authority. The span of Elsie's acting career proved instrumental in her overall evolution, offering tangible benefits that extended far beyond the footlights and prepared her for future endeavors. Financially, it delivered the independence she had long sought, with steady salaries from Frohman's company and touring engagements providing her with personal income to cover living expenses, travel, and investments without reliance on family or a spouse. This economic freedom empowered her to make autonomous decisions, such as funding her Parisian shopping trips or contributing to her shared household with Bessie Marbury. Professionally, the theater served as a rigorous apprenticeship, teaching her essential principles of design and presentation. She gained expertise in lighting techniques to enhance mood and visibility, understanding how spotlights and colored gels could transform a scene, scale and proportion in set construction, ensuring elements harmonized for visual impact, and creating atmospheric effects to evoke specific emotions. In viewers, skills honed through collaboration with directors, set designers, and costumers. Extensive travel with touring troupes, visiting cities like Chicago, Boston, San Francisco, and even international venues, broadened her exposure to diverse architectural styles, regional tastes, and cultural influences, refining her adaptability and observational abilities. Although her theatrical contributions faded from historical memory, overshadowed by greater performers like Sarah Bernhardt, this phase was a vital incubator, equipping her with practical tools and confidence that would translate seamlessly into her subsequent profession. By 1905, at the age of 46, Elsie's stage career had reached a stagnation point, prompting her to seek new horizons. The roles available to her had become repetitive and lackluster, often secondary parts in formulaic comedies that failed to challenge her or advance her artistry, reflecting the industry's bias toward younger actresses for leading positions and the physical demands of constant performances that grew taxing with age. Recognizing these limitations, along with shifting audience preferences toward more realistic dramas influenced by playwrights like Henrik Ibsen, Elsie decided to retire from acting, viewing it as a natural endpoint rather than a failure. This transition was facilitated by her established reputation and financial security, allowing her to pivot without desperation. The catalyst for her next chapter emerged from the familiar realm of New York's upper echelons, where her social connections, cultivated through salons, friendships with the wealthy, and her fashion icon status opened doors to opportunities in a field aligned with her true passions, aesthetics and environment curation. This shift marked the end of one era and the dawn of her pioneering work in interior decoration, building directly on the foundations laid during her theatrical years. In 1905, a pivotal moment occurred in Elsie de Wolfe's career when a coalition of influential New York women, spearheaded by Anne Tracy Morgan, the daughter of the renowned financier J.P. Morgan and Florence Jaffray Harriman, embarked on an ambitious project to create an exclusive social club for women. This initiative aimed to provide a counterpart to the city's prestigious men's clubs, such as the Union Club, founded in 1836 and known for its elite membership, and the Knickerbocker Club, established in 1871 as a bastion of old money society. The proposed club, named the Colony Club, was envisioned as a sophisticated venue where women could gather for intellectual discussions, leisure activities, and networking, free from the male-dominated spaces that dominated New York's social landscape. To realize this vision, the committee commissioned Stanford White, a preeminent architect from the firm McKim, Mead & White, celebrated for landmark designs like the Washington Square Arch and Madison Square Garden. White was tasked with constructing the building at the prime location of Madison Avenue and 30th Street, incorporating neoclassical elements with grand facades, ornate detailing, and functional layouts suited to club activities, including lounges, dining areas, and event spaces. This decision reflected the era's architectural trends, emphasizing grandeur and permanence, but it also set the stage for innovative interior considerations that would distinguish the club from its masculine equivalents. As construction progressed, the club's organizing committee encountered a significant challenge in conceptualizing the interior spaces. They explicitly rejected the conventional aesthetics prevalent in men's clubs and luxury hotels, which typically featured dark wood paneling, such as mahogany or oak walls that absorbed light, heavy velvet or leather upholstery, intricate carvings, and a somber palette of deep reds, browns, and golds that evoked authority and introspection, but often felt oppressive. Instead, the women sought an environment that mirrored the warmth and elegance of a refined private residence, prioritizing comfort, femininity, and a sense of welcoming domesticity to foster relaxation and social interaction among members. This required a designer with an intuitive understanding of residential sensibilities, exceptional taste, and the ability to blend functionality with beauty. After deliberation, they selected Elsie de Wolfe, a fellow socialite from their circles, despite her lack of professional qualifications. This choice was unconventional and fraught with risks. Elsie possessed no formal training in architecture or design, had never overseen a project of this magnitude involving budgets, timelines, and teams of craftsmen, and her only demonstrable work was the renovation of her personal home at 122 East 17th Street, which showcased her emerging style but offered limited evidence of scalability. A failure could result in severe public embarrassment, damaging not only Elsie's reputation but also the credibility of the high-profile committee members, whose social and financial standing amplified the stakes in New York's competitive elite society. Elsie de Wolfe viewed the Colony Club Commission as a transformative opportunity that aligned perfectly with her evolving expertise in aesthetics and her desire for professional fulfillment beyond acting. At 46, with her stage career waning, she eagerly accepted the role, armed with a generous budget that allowed for premium materials and international sourcing, as well as considerable autonomy and decision-making to execute her vision. However, tensions arose immediately with architect Stanford White, whose traditionalist approach favored grandiose, opulent interiors inspired by Renaissance and Beaux-Arts styles, incorporating elaborate moldings, gilded accents, and dense ornamentation to convey prestige and historical depth. Elsie, in contrast, advocated for a groundbreaking departure from these norms, insisting on a fresh, invigorating aesthetic that challenged the excesses of the Gilded Age. Their clashes involved heated discussions over material choices, color schemes, and spatial arrangements, with Elsie pushing back against White's proposals to maintain creative integrity. This conflict highlighted her confidence and determination as she navigated the power dynamics with a prominent male architect while asserting her innovative ideas, ultimately gaining concessions that allowed her to proceed with her plans. Over the 2-year project duration from 1905 to 1907, Elsie implemented a suite of pioneering design strategies that redefined interior spaces, drawing on her theatrical background, fashion sensibilities, and personal philosophy of environmental well-being. For the club's primary drawing room, a central gathering area, she selected a subtle light gray for the walls to evoke serenity and openness, rejecting the era's darker tones that could feel confining. To infuse a sense of nature and whimsy, she commissioned custom green and white trellis work panels installed along the walls, mimicking garden arbors and creating an illusion of an outdoor pavilion within the urban setting, which enhanced the room's airy ambiance. Furniture choices emphasized lightness and comfort, with wicker pieces, durable yet delicate frames, upholstered in vibrant glazed chintz fabrics, featuring floral or geometric patterns in cheerful colors. This material, once confined to informal bedrooms or rural cottages due to its casual texture and washability, was elevated here to a sophisticated staple. Across the club's other areas, including libraries, dining rooms, and lounges, Elsie adhered to foundational principles, maximizing natural light through strategically placed mirrors that reflected and amplified sunlight, and using translucent sheer fabrics like voile or muslin for curtains to filter rather than block illumination. Her color scheme favored soft neutral tones, creams for warmth, ivories for purity, and pale pastels like blush pink or sky blue for subtle vibrancy, promoting a calming, uplifting atmosphere. Simplicity governed her layouts, with deliberate elimination of Victorian clutter, such as excessive knickknacks, layered rugs, or overcrowded shelves, ensuring each element served a purpose. Furniture selections prioritized 18th century French antiques, characterized by slender cabriole legs, gilded accents, and graceful curves, which offered elegance and proportionality without the bulkiness of contemporary pieces, sourced from European dealers to align with functionality, such as ergonomic seating for prolonged conversations or tables suited to tea services. After 2 years of intensive planning, sourcing, and execution, involving coordination with artisans for custom installations, oversight of construction timelines, and budget management to accommodate high-end imports, the Colony Club reached completion in early 1907. The official opening in March 1907 unveiled a space that captivated New York's social and cultural spheres, drawing crowds of members, guests, and media for inaugural events like receptions and tours. The building's exterior, designed by White, provided a stately shell, but Elsie's interiors stole the spotlight, presenting a cohesive environment that felt innovative and inviting. Public reaction was overwhelmingly positive, with visitors marveling at the club's departure from familiar aesthetics, describing it as a harmonious blend of luxury and livability that encouraged lingering and interaction. The Colony Club's debut generated widespread acclaim, positioning it as a landmark achievement in design and women's spaces. Contemporary accounts, including a New York Times article, lauded it as a paradise for women, emphasizing its restful and refreshing qualities that contrasted with the city's bustling, often overwhelming public venues, and highlighting how the light-filled rooms promoted mental clarity and social ease. This success catapulted Elsie de Wolfe to instant fame, validating her unorthodox methods and transforming her from an actress with design interests into a sought-after authority. Wealthy patrons, inspired by the club's transformative appeal, eagerly commissioned her services for their private residences, seeking to replicate her signature style of lightness, simplicity, and French-inspired elegance. In doing so, Elsie elevated interior decoration from a mere commercial activity, previously handled by furniture salesmen or upholsterers focused on transactions, to a recognized art form that integrated psychology, functionality, and beauty. As the profession's inaugural celebrity, she set standards for future decorators, influencing American taste toward modernism and establishing a legacy that redefined domestic environments in the early 20th century. Following the triumphant opening of the Colony Club in March 1907, Elsie de Wolfe rapidly ascended to the forefront of interior decoration in the United States, transforming her newfound acclaim into a thriving professional enterprise. She opened a dedicated office on Fifth Avenue, New York City's premier commercial thoroughfare, which served as a central hub for consultations, project planning, and client meetings, reflecting the avenue's status as a symbol of luxury and sophistication. To handle the influx of commissions, she assembled and managed an expanding team of assistants, including draftsmen for sketching layouts, secretaries for administrative tasks, and coordinators for liaising with suppliers, ensuring efficient operations amid growing demand. Her clientele comprised the nation's most affluent and influential families, such as the Fricks, industrialist Henry Clay Frick and his wife Adelaide, whose Pittsburgh and New York residences required opulent yet refined updates. The Morgans, including J.P. Morgan and his daughter Anne, building on prior social ties. The Vanderbilts, whose vast estates like the Breakers in Newport demanded large-scale transformations. And the Hewitts, founders of the Cooper Hewitt Museum, seeking designs that aligned with their artistic sensibilities. These high-profile projects not only elevated her status but also generated substantial revenue, as Elsie charged premium fees structured on a commission basis, typically a percentage of the total project cost, often 10 to 15%, which maximized profitability by tying her earnings to the scale and extravagance of the work. She demonstrated astute business acumen in overseeing intricate budgets that accounted for material costs, labor, and contingencies, negotiating favorable terms with numerous craftsmen such as carpenters, upholsterers, and antique dealers, and coordinating timelines to meet deadlines, often juggling multiple sites simultaneously without compromising quality. This organizational prowess allowed her to navigate the complexities of sourcing rare items from Europe, managing shipping delays, and adapting to client whims, solidifying her reputation as a reliable and efficient professional in an emerging field. As Elsie's practice flourished in the years following the 1907, her once innovative design principles evolved into the benchmark for upscale American interiors, influencing a shift away from the excesses of the Victorian era toward a more refined and functional aesthetic. She advocated strongly for discarding the bulky, elaborately carved Victorian furniture, characterized by overstuffed sofas, massive armoires, and intricate inlays that dominated late 19th century homes, in exchange for the graceful, proportionate lines of 18th century French and English antiques, such as Louis XV chairs with cabriole legs, or Georgian side tables with subtle veneers, which offered elegance without overwhelming spaces. Dark, busy wallpapers with floral or damask patterns were supplanted by smoothly painted walls in luminous shades like soft whites, pale blues, or subtle grays, which reflected light and created illusions of expansiveness in urban residences. A core tenet of her approach was the eradication of unnecessary clutter, insisting that rooms should feature only items that served dual purposes of beauty and utility, such as a decorative vase that also held fresh flowers, or a streamlined console table for both display and storage, thereby promoting visual harmony and ease of maintenance. Comfort and practicality were paramount, with furniture arrangements designed to facilitate social dynamics. Grouping seating in conversational clusters around fireplaces or windows, incorporating plush cushions for relaxation, and ensuring adequate lighting for reading or entertaining. Among her distinctive contributions was the introduction of animal prints as versatile accents, particularly leopard patterns on rugs, pillows, or upholstery, which she positioned as a sophisticated neutral that added texture and exotic flair without clashing with neutral palettes, drawing inspiration from her travels and fashion background to infuse boldness into otherwise serene environments. This philosophy not only catered to her elite clients' desires for modernity, but also addressed broader societal changes, such as women's increasing roles in household management during the Progressive Era, making homes more livable and reflective of personal expression. In 1913, at the height of her career, Elsie de Wolfe formalized her design ethos through the publication of her seminal book, The House in Good Taste, which emerged as one of the earliest accessible guides to interior decoration, aimed at a general readership rather than just professionals or the ultra-wealthy. Blending elements of autobiography with instructional content, the book recounted her personal journey from aesthetic dissatisfaction in her childhood home to pioneering a new field, while offering step-by-step advice on creating harmonious living spaces. It achieved immediate commercial success, selling widely through mainstream publishers and appealing to middle-class homemakers eager for affordable elegance amid rising consumerism in early 20th century America. Written in straightforward, engaging prose that avoided jargon, Elsie articulated her guiding tenets, famously stating, "I believe in plenty of optimism and white paint, in the unity of a room, and in suitability, emphasizing positivity, cohesion, and context-appropriate choices as foundations for any design. The text provided hands-on recommendations across various aspects, from optimal furniture placement to encourage flow and interaction, to selecting window dressings like lightweight curtains for light diffusion. It also covered color theory, advocating pale hues for tranquility, and material selections, such as chintz for upholstery or mirrors for spatial enhancement. Illustrated with photographs of her projects, including the Colony Club and private residences, the book made sophisticated taste attainable, encouraging readers to audit their own homes for unnecessary items and experiment with simple updates like repainting walls or rearranging rooms. Its enduring popularity kept it in print for decades, serving as an educational resource that inspired amateur decorators and professionals alike. Through her prolific commissions and the widespread dissemination of The House in Good Taste after 1913, Elsie de Wolfe profoundly reshaped American perceptions of home environments, extending her influence well into the 20th century and establishing interior design as a legitimate discipline. Her work democratized aesthetic principles, making them accessible beyond the elite by promoting ideas that could be scaled to modest budgets, such as using inexpensive paint for dramatic changes or thrifting for antique-inspired pieces, thus empowering ordinary households to prioritize beauty and functionality. The book's success amplified her voice, leading to lectures, magazine articles, and consultations that further popularized her methods during a time of social flux, including World War I and the Roaring Twenties, when homes evolved to reflect modern lifestyles. By challenging Victorian heaviness and introducing lightness, simplicity, and personalization, she single-handedly catalyzed a national trend toward more optimistic, user-centered interiors, influencing subsequent designers like Dorothy Draper and Billy Baldwin. Her legacy endured as a foundational force in the field, with the House in Good Taste regarded as a cornerstone text that not only chronicled her innovations but also inspired generations to view their living spaces as extensions of personal well-being and style, fundamentally altering how Americans approach domestic architecture and decoration. While Elsie's professional life was centered in New York, her spiritual and creative home was in France. In 1906, with her career ascending, she and Bessie Marbury purchased the Villa Trianon, a historic but neglected property in the town of Versailles, a short distance from the famous palace. The villa would become her most personal and celebrated project, a living laboratory for her design ideas and the center of her social life for 40 years. The property was in a state of severe disrepair when they acquired it. Elsie embarked on a meticulous and costly restoration, which became a lifelong passion. She redesigned the interiors from top to bottom, creating a series of elegant, light-filled rooms that perfectly embodied her aesthetic. She filled the home with a museum-quality collection of 18th-century French furniture, art, and objects. The house was designed for entertaining, with a grand salon that opened onto a magnificent terrace. The gardens were as important to her as the house itself. She hired the best landscape architects to help her create a series of outdoor rooms, including a formal parterre, a swimming pool, and a theater. She was famous for her whimsical touches, such as a collection of decorative stone monkeys and a dog cemetery for her beloved pets. The Villa Trianon became one of the most famous private homes in Europe. It was the setting for legendary parties, where Elsie, and later as Lady Mendel, entertained a dazzling mix of international society, from Europe royalty and American billionaires to Hollywood stars and Parisian artists. It was at the Villa Trianon that she and Bessie lived most openly as a couple, creating a sanctuary where their unconventional life was the norm. The villa was the ultimate expression of Elsie's belief that creating a beautiful environment was the highest form of art. When World War I began in 1914, Elsie de Wolfe was in her mid-50s. Though she could have safely remained in the United States, her deep love for France compelled her to contribute to the war effort. She volunteered as a nurse with the French Red Cross. This was not a symbolic gesture. She worked in hospitals near the front lines, treating wounded soldiers. Her work was dangerous and grueling. At one hospital, she suffered severe burns to her hands and face from a mustard gas attack that contaminated the facility. She refused to be evacuated and continued working. Her primary role was not medical but logistical and morale-boosting. Using her considerable organizational skills and social connections, she secured vital supplies for the hospitals. She also focused on the soldiers' environment, understanding that even small comforts could have a profound impact. She would bring flowers, books, and better food to the wards, and she worked to make the grim hospital spaces cleaner and brighter. Her bravery and dedication did not go unnoticed. The French government awarded her the Croix de Guerre and the Légion d'honneur, two of the nation's highest military and civil honors. Her wartime service revealed a side of her character that was often overlooked beneath her glamorous public persona. It demonstrated a deep capacity for grit, courage, and compassion. The experience also reinforced her belief in the therapeutic power of a pleasant environment, a principle that had always guided her professional work. The 1920s were a period of immense success and social prominence for Elsie de Wolfe. However, the post-war world was also one of shifting social mores. The quiet tolerance that had allowed her Boston marriage with Bessie Marbury to exist without open scandal began to erode. In this changing climate, Elsie made a decision that stunned her friends and profoundly altered her personal life. In 1926, at the age of 61, she married Sir Charles Mendel, a British diplomat and press attaché at the British Embassy in Paris. The marriage was a matter of intense speculation. It was widely understood to be a marriage of convenience, or a mariage blanc. Charles Mendel was a known homosexual, and the union was not based on romantic love. The motivations were complex and pragmatic. Primarily, the marriage gave Elsie the title and status of Lady Mendel. This provided her with a permanent and unassailable social position, insulating her from gossip and solidifying her place in the highest echelons of international society. It was a strategic move to protect her brand and her social standing in an increasingly judgmental world. For Bessie Marbury, the marriage was a devastating blow. Although Elsie did not end their relationship, and they continued to co-own the Villa Trianon, the public nature of the marriage was a deep betrayal. It effectively erased the legitimacy of their 40-year partnership. Close friends reported that Bessie was heartbroken. The dynamic of their relationship changed irrevocably. While they remained connected, the central pillar of their shared life had been removed. Bessie Marbury's health declined in the years following the marriage. She died in 1933. Elsie was with her at the end. In her will, Bessie left a significant portion of her estate to Elsie, a final acknowledgement of their lifelong bond. Bessie's death marked the end of an era for Elsie. She had lost the partner who had been her anchor, her champion, and her intellectual equal for over 4 decades. From that point on, as Lady Mendel, she would navigate the world alone. Now officially, Lady Mendel, Elsie entered a new phase of her life as a global icon of style and society. She divided her time between Paris, New York, and a new home in Beverly Hills, California. Hollywood in its golden age was a natural fit for her. She purchased a house and in typical fashion completely renovated it, naming it After All. The home became a premier social destination, and Elsie became the reigning hostess of Hollywood society. Her parties were legendary, blending movie stars like Greta Garbo and Cary Grant with visiting European aristocrats and powerful studio heads. She remained incredibly active and vital into her 70s and 80s. She was a pioneer of physical fitness, practicing yoga and gymnastics daily. She became famous for her ability to perform perfect headstands, a feat she continued almost until the end of her life. She claimed it was essential for maintaining her health and vitality. Her personal style remained impeccable and famously eccentric. In her later years, she often tinted her hair a pale shade of blue or green to match her jewelry, a signature look that was widely copied. She continued to work, taking on select decorating commissions and acting as a consultant for studios and film sets. Her influence was pervasive. The clean, elegant, and sophisticated look of Hollywood films of the 1930s owes a significant debt to the aesthetic she had championed for decades. She was no longer just a decorator. She was the ultimate arbiter of taste, a living legend whose pronouncements on style were treated as gospel. The outbreak of World War II in Europe in 1939 brought this glamorous chapter to an abrupt end. In 1940, as the German army advanced on Paris, Elsie, now in her late 70s, was forced to flee France. She escaped just ahead of the occupation, leaving behind her beloved Villa Trianon and most of her priceless collections of art and furniture. She traveled to the United States, effectively becoming a refugee, albeit a very wealthy one. During the war, the Nazi regime confiscated the Villa Trianon. It was used as a headquarters for German officers. The contents were looted, and the property fell into disrepair. For Elsie, the loss of her home, the masterpiece she had spent a lifetime creating, was a profound blow. She spent the war years in the United States, living between New York and Beverly Hills. She dedicated herself to fundraising for the Allied war effort, particularly for Free France. She remained a prominent social figure, but her life was overshadowed by the war and the loss of her home. After the liberation of France in 1944, Elsie was able to return. She was nearly 80 years old. She found the Villa Trianon in ruins, stripped of its treasures and badly damaged. With remarkable determination, she undertook the monumental task of restoring it for a final time. She spent the last years of her life painstakingly bringing her home back to its former glory, tracking down looted items and commissioning new pieces. Elsie de Wolfe, Lady Mendel, died at the Villa Trianon on July 12, 1950. She was 91 years old. Her life had spanned nearly a century of radical change, from the horse-drawn carriages of the Gilded Age to the dawn of the atomic era. Her legacy is twofold. Professionally, she was a true revolutionary. She invented the field of professional interior decoration, transforming it from a trade into an art. Her core principles, simplicity, comfort, light, and suitability, remain the foundation of modern design. She replaced the dark, formal clutter of the 19th century with a lighter, more personal, and more livable aesthetic that continues to shape how we design our homes today. She created a viable and respected career path for women, proving that the traditional female domain of the home could be a source of professional power and financial success. Personally, her life was a testament to the art of self-invention. In an era when women's lives were strictly circumscribed, she forged her own path. She achieved financial independence, created a global brand, and lived for 40 years in a committed partnership with another woman. Her later marriage and adoption of a title were pragmatic concessions to the society in which she lived, complex acts of self-preservation that highlight the pressures she faced. Elsie de Wolfe's enduring legacy is not just in the millions of light-filled rooms that exist because of her, but in the example of a life lived with audacious style, formidable will, and an unwavering belief in the power of beauty. That's a wrap for today's video. If you enjoyed it, smash that like button, drop us a comment below, and don't forget to subscribe so you'll never miss our new content. Thanks for watching.